Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So there are many diagrams that we know, we learned when we were young, many methods to try to discern the truth of things, for lack of a better term, or the union of different things. The most easy example is this. Remember the Venn diagram? You put the thing and its other, and you try to see the common ground between both, right? So in a sense, this is not so far from the idea of dialectics, where you have a thesis and an antithesis, and you try to find a synthesis between the two, okay? So this synthesis, the union of two different things, is what generally in alchemy we call the union of opposites. In a metaphorical sense, it also can be seen as the transformative part, right? Because when you synthesize something, think about synthetic things, you know, like plastic is synthetic, you know, it combines many different things to create a new thing, right? So this is the main principle of dialectics. You have a thing, it's other, and you try to come up with like a unified understanding of both. Now, the other day, I saw this symbol online, which I felt like I want to try to give it my own version. The same thing as what we were talking about, but it starts with a spiral, and the same spiral goes to this side. So it's like from the same source emerges two things that can go in different directions, okay? And I'm drawing it offhand, but this has to do with the golden ratio. Well, I've been using this spiral a lot lately to kind of try to symbolize the unfolding principle or the unfolding aesthetic. In a sense that the spiral unfolds, right? It keeps going on until eternity. A spiral can take different directions. Like from one spiral, we can have another smaller spiral. We can, you know, it can go to... So that's the idea, okay? It looks like a gun barrel. It looks like something that kind of tries to focus you into the center, okay? So if we take this symbolism, we can also somehow discern from one point, like we were talking last time, so from one center, from one source, we can discern, let's say, a positive and a negative, right? But it all goes back to the same thing. In a way as to show how different things can, yeah, everything comes from one, right? But also that we as humans who name things, وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ, right? God taught Adam the names, taught Adam how to name things. So in a sense, we humans have the power of defining things through words, okay, through names, through the associations that we give to them. But these are all arbitrary. These are all human-made things, okay? So two opposing things actually come from the same source. Let's take two very obvious opposites, let's say white and black, okay? We see them as opposites, but in a sense, if we look at also ancient wisdom, Taoism, the yin-yang, right? Black and white are intermingled always with one another. So the separation of opposites becomes a different game, right? A game that aims to show the differences more than it shows the similarities between things. But in the end, everything folds out from one, okay? So keeping this in mind, let's look again at how alchemy understands, let's say, the union of opposites and stuff. So we've already established before that there are 4 phases, and these phases are distinct. Like in classical alchemy, there are 4 phases of the transformation of a metal. Okay. Of metals. And we can understand this very visually, okay? So the colors are black, white, red, and yellow. These are the colors. But each color has its association with it, right? Black is associated with lead, white is associated with silver, red is associated with copper, and yellow is usually associated with gold. However, not everything that glistens is gold, right? So yellow, red, white, and black can be deceptive. They are not the thing in itself. And throughout history, nations often found that the best way to create something new is to invert something that already existed. Okay? Again, let's take black and white as examples. Let's play an association game. Okay? So usually, black is associated with death. White is associated with life. Why does this association come from? Because black is the lack of color, it's dark, this is light, you know, darkness, light. Okay, so we tend to, as humans, maybe make these associations because darkness is scary, unknown, whereas light is visible. Darkness is latent, whereas light is manifest. And then comes the association that with light comes life, with death comes, with black comes death. However, black is the color of the soil. That cultures, nations have lived by and thrived and grew. Whereas white is the color of bones, which associates with death, destruction, and all of that. Just in a sense to show that these are easily changeable. There's nothing that's static. And why I like the alchemical method, let's say, as opposed to the dialectical method, is that 4 is less limiting than 3. Remember 4444? 4 is the number of the 4 elements, the 4 seasons. It's a very, it's the 4 corners. It's a very material number, 4, right? And with materiality, I think there's also an association of stability, right? That the 4 corners are stable. But alchemy, using these 4 phases, kind of gives the practitioner or the user a sense that there is a dynamism constantly at play. And like, try to put yourself in the mind of someone who lives in the pre-modern age where we don't, like, where the animation of things is not as accessible as today. Today we have a screen that we look like that animates our lives constantly. There's something moving on it, right? You can easily make an animation. Like these days, there's been a lot, this image of the image is surfacing a lot, this alchemical image of the green lion devouring the sun. It comes from old manuscripts of images. I'm gonna put the images here. But now, today, we can, with AI, animate it to see the actual transformation. This image basically symbolizes, the green lion symbolizes like immature strength, that when it reaches the zenith of its potential, devours the sun, in turn transforming red, which is like the mature power. Again, red is a color of transformation. And the sun comes back again. So when the lion eats the sun bleeds red into the lion transforms red, and then the sun comes back, it's a new sun. This image is surfacing a lot today on the internet, at least in my algorithm, I'm seeing it a lot. What made me think about this thing is that I think alchemists, what they were trying to do, among other things, is to try to show that life is constantly dynamic and transformative, and that animation, the animation of things, making things move, has a lot to do with, with the names of things, right? because names change. Like even so, that's why I think alchemists found that naming the phases as colors basically is the best way to go about it, because colors are also transformative. Like there's something about colors that there's the color wheels, the colors keep changing, there's different shades of the same color. So colors in a sense are dynamic things and animated things and transformative, you know? So with all this in mind, I'm gonna go back to that symbol that we started out with, which is the spiral that goes in one direction and the other spiral that goes in another direction. Kind of looks like an eye. And on these two directions, we have two different things. Let's put here heaven and hell and talk a bit about the associations of these two things. Mainly, the Abrahamic religions have used the concepts of heaven and hell to guide people's actions in this world. In a sense, you do good things, you go to heaven, you do bad things, you go to hell. And reading a lot the Quran specifically, to try to see the images associated with these two places, it makes you think. It makes you think that heaven is usually, and this I'm drawing from what I've seen, please you can add or subtract or tell me if there's something I got wrong. But in Surah Al-Kahf, there's a few verses that describe what paradise looks like. I do not have them memorized. I will post the verses here, but in a sense, it's a beautiful dress. You know, people wearing beautiful dress or clothing and sitting on couches, sitting on furniture. Whereas images associated with hell, one that is very famous is like your skin would be ripped off and then it comes back and would be ripped off until eternity. Okay, so let's say skin peeling image. There's also Azab al-Qubur, which is like the torment of graves. There's a lot of images associated with hell. And this one really used to piss people off because like, why would God do something that horrible to someone? Again, this is all imagery. This is all metaphor in an attempt to animate or illuminate a certain concept. And for me, the concept of hell that is being illuminated in the Quran is that it's endless suffering. You know, if your skin is being peeled off and then it grows back and peels off again, then you will be suffering all the time. Whereas there, you see that there's sakina, is a beautiful word, where your heart is just calm enough that you dress beautifully and you sit on beautiful furniture. I love this image. But I have 2 points I want to make here. I hope I can make them properly and make sense. First of all, this image is something you see in the world, as well as the other image. Someone constantly suffering is something you see in this world. Just look at the people of Palestine. Look at the people of the south of Lebanon. A constant cycle of suffering. Every time a new house is built, it is destroyed. Every time the skin grows back, it is peeled. Whereas beautiful clothing and beautiful furniture is the image of any successful or wealthy person, right? This is, even if they're not wealthy and successful, this image, I see this all the time when I come here to Lebanon, is this image is always like, there's a lot of emphasis on it, like beautiful furniture, beautiful house, beautiful clothing, and we sit, okay? Another association is hellfire, right? Right? And the light of heaven. I'm just picking random two to make a point, okay? So heaven is light. Okay, rivers of milk and honey and all of these things are associated also. We remember always in this lecture series, I'm taking the Islamic tradition as the basis that I talk from, okay? So in Islam, heaven is usually understood as a place of calm, of Nur al-Jannah, I guess, and Nar Jahannam, okay? So, but both of them are lights, if you notice. Like both of them are, light is something associated with fire, no? Because there has been an inversion here. Okay? Fire, for many people in the East, has often been associated with goodness. Okay? With light, with Iblis, with Jinn, and with God. Okay? But fire is a transformative substance. It's a transformative element, right? It's the element that can change things. A phoenix is associated with fire. A phoenix burns to ashes and then rises again from the ashes. So lately I've been finding it very weird that fire is associated with hell, until I learned that Zoroastrianism, I didn't learn this recently, I just realized it. Zoroastrianism, which is one of the oldest monotheistic religions that existed in the world, emerged in Persia, I think in 6000 BC, a very old religion that many scholars believe gave birth to the three Abrahamic religions. Well, Zoroastrianism believed in one God, okay, that had two faces, okay? One face was good, and one face was bad, right? But the images associated to the good and the bad was that the good is the fire that illuminates, the fire that burns, the fire that transforms things, the fire that gives life, whereas the bad or the evil, maybe evil is a better word than bad, whereas evil is associated with coldness, sterility, order. Think about it visually. This is so beautiful when I discovered it. Fire is something that is constantly animated. Fire is the most animated. Water has its animation, right? Ripples, waves, flows, all of that. But fire is an animation that gives light, that also can burn. Like fire is a very delicate element, you have to be very careful around it because it can cause huge disaster or it can really breathe life into a whole civilization. So for me, it's another example of cultural inversion when you take such a powerful symbol like fire that, no coincidence, Yazidis worship fire, Zoroastrians worship fire, a lot of small sects in the East worship fire as like a revered element. It's no coincidence that at some point, in order to gain cultural control, this image was taken, transformed, and associated with the worst place you want to ever go to. But with all of this, there is the theory, the esoteric theory, the Gnostic theory, that heaven and hell are not places that exist in the afterlife. Heaven and hell are places that exist today. Now think about everything I've been saying. Who controls fire? And how is fire being used today? I see bombing. I see people burning. I see destruction. I see images of Gaza. I see images of the south of Lebanon. I see images from Iran. I see images from Yemen. I see images from Africa. I see images from all these places that the usurper has stolen this fire and gave us hell on earth. And these people are often sitting in beautiful clothing and on comfortable furniture. This is just, again, a call for people to be aware of the symbols and how the symbols transform. Because as media consumers and creators, we should be very much aware of these symbols and how to use them, because the way you use things really can shift a worldview, okay, on this very confusing world that we live in today. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen.